So in this video, I will be discussing 3 books that I've read recently that I really got a lot out of. The first of these books would be the Danaher Diaries Volume 1. And in this book, an idea that I truly appreciated was John Danaher's talks on the triangle submission, and how this submission is both a choke, but it's also a joint locking submission. So it's so easy to be, when you are in this position, to, as well as attack the neck, also attack an arm with an arm bar potentially, or maybe a wrist lock. There are just so many different options. But some quick backstory on the Danaher Diaries. This book series is a compilation of John Danaher's Instagram posts, where he has given truly astounding feedback on various positions and his various thoughts on both training, competition, submissions. It runs the gamut of potential topics, and it's been truly something I found enlightening. One thing with this series is that the works can be kind of repetitive, in that you'll find a similar idea in different texts. So if you read Volume 1, you'll find some things in Volume 2 that are of the same sort. But one thing that I appreciated was that this repetition kind of just gives you more exposure to the idea. And much like with a submission hold, when we are practicing it, we don't get it immediately, but we get it after numerous reps of doing this submission hold. Just like that, we get this idea based off of having numerous reps, if you will, of having this exposure and reading this material. So I found that piece of his book, or that feature of his book series, to actually be a plus and not a minus. One other thing that I've read is the Danaher Diaries Volume 2, and I've just kind of been very much so into his work, as I read the first volume and immediately had to go to the second. One thing that featured in the second that didn't feature in the first is the talk of using your head as kind of like a controlling limb that can be used to push, or in some instances pull, an opponent. And this was a very neat concept, in that in some positions it can be used to be very helpful. For instance, if I'm in guard, I really like emphasizing head pressure, even in a submission-only setting. In MMA, it has obvious benefits because you can really help smash someone and hold their head down when you put your head against their chin to keep it in place, and then you know where it is to locate it for your strikes. But even in jiu-jitsu, it can be used as a pressure element, I find, when I can place my head into the diaphragm. That's something that I really like making use of. And I appreciated that in this book, he really laid out that this was an important feature, and that it can be very useful to know how to use your head in certain positions. Now, the last book that I would like to discuss is Rickson Gracie's Breathe, A Life in Flow. Now, this work is very unique in that it's one of my first exposures with like a history of jiu-jitsu type of text. I studied judo like this all the time, but for jiu-jitsu, I'm not as familiar with like the Gracie history. And what you'll find is that with a lot of judo and the Gracie system, and judo and jiu-jitsu, they kind of intermesh at certain points. But I liked hearing and reading about just the jiu-jitsu aspects of the history of the art. So there'll be points in his work that he'll talk about judo, and it would be impossible not to. But I loved how it would detail his history of going to Japan and experiencing that culture. And I loved also his thoughts on the UFC. But what I found the most fascinating, what I'd really like to impress upon you, is that it's a great book when it comes to talking about the history of submission holds. Now this topic can just be a load of fun, because we all do these techniques, but we don't know precisely where they started. And for instance, when Hicks and Gracie talks about the history of the Americana, for instance, this submission was founded based upon the roles of Horace Gracie and Bob Anderson, who was an American wrestler. This technique we all are aware of it just has as fascinating a history as, say, the Kimura. But I wasn't familiar with the history of this technique, and that's truly something I appreciated learning about. But those have been my thoughts on 3 books that I've especially appreciated reading, and I would highly recommend them as just a history of martial arts, or just knowledge about techniques and mentalities that you need to have while you're training. John Danaher does an extensive amount of research in this compilation series, and it's about a wide range of topics, but all of which that I found useful. And I hope you consider giving these books a shot. And if you like this video, be sure to click the button and also subscribe. But take care.